Hi, I'm here today to tell you a little bit more about the Ethical Tea Partnership. And I'm going to talk to you first about how we're structured. We're a membership organisation. We have over 50 companies who buy, blend and pack and sell tea, and their funding helps us drive change in the tea sector. We look at tea producing origins in a number of countries, and we have a UK secretariat and team members and colleagues who work in those tea producing origins. So our teams internationally are in 3 East African countries, that's Kenya, Rwanda and Malawi, and in 4 Asian countries, that's India, Sri Lanka, China and Indonesia. So let me talk to you about the approach that we take at ETP. We've defined this in our strategy, it's the Strategy 2030. And the strategy really looks to address some of these very complex systemic problems that we see in tea producing origins. And because it's complex and systemic, we think there are a number of approaches that we should take. But ultimately, our vision is for a tea industry that's thriving and is socially just and environmentally sustainable. So how do we achieve that? We have a number of ways of looking at it, and that includes projects, pilots, and policy. Let me talk to you about those 3 things. Our projects are the more conventional or traditional development approach to addressing issues in developing countries. So this might be in partnership with an NGO to deliver child protection work, or to work on gender empowerment, gender equality in a tea producing origin. But we think those projects are really, really useful to understand the cause of the problems, but as soon as we leave, sometimes those problems reappear. So this is why we orchestrate with the policy and the pilots work as well. The policy work looks at the legislation, the legislative environment and the company policies, which can sometimes contribute to inadvertently to the problems that we see. So what is there in a government's legislation that might be exacerbating the problems that we see in tea, and how can we provide an evidence base to suggest a different policy and a different legislation? Our final approach is pilots. Now this is just a broad name for business innovation and really looking at what companies are doing. This is producer companies and the companies who buy and pack tea and all the members of the tea value chain, asking what they could do differently and better to address some of the issues that we have. A good example of that might be switching salary payments to digital transfers to banks, and that minimises losses in the cash transfer. Or another example for a business pilot would be to look at responsible purchasing practices or better procurement practices. At ETP, we've identified 3 areas that we want to create impact. These are the economics of tea, equality in tea, and environmental sustainability of tea. When I say economics, it's a broad, all-encompassing term for the thriving tea industry that we want to see, but it really focuses on wages for workers in tea estates and plantations and living incomes for farmers and smallholders who grow tea. They're hugely important in the sector, and we want to address some of the poverty, wages and incomes that we see in the sector. When I talk about equality in tea, this is largely based on gender equality, but there are other dimensions as well. We think health and safety is part of equality, and we also think that the youth in tea communities should be included in our equality work. And finally, the environmental sustainability. Well, that name is probably a little bit more self-explanatory, but we're looking at climate adaptation and climate mitigation, and really increasingly we're seeing the impacts of climate change really dramatically affecting tea. So a lot of our work is aiming to support farmers and tea growers to adapt and mitigate